Hello, health champions. Why is it almost impossible to lose belly fat and lose weight, and even harder to keep it off? And why is it that some people can lose weight easily, but then those same methods they used can backfire for people with stubborn weight? Today I want to talk about the factors that really make a difference, because that's the only way that you can lose belly fat and lose weight, and more importantly, to keep it off. Doesn't it seem sometimes like food is the problem? If we could just forget about it and not eat, then we'd be so much better off? Well, not really, because we need food. There is a profound innate drive in every living species to go look for food. And a lot of the behavior, a lot of the time of almost every species is geared toward finding or eating food. Because food is fuel that leads to energy that, of course, helps us survive. And all of this behavior, all this drive is driven by hunger and satiety. It's guided by these two sensations. And because they're so important to survival, they're also controlled by very, very complex systems that we have to get it just right. But when we don't get it just right, when there is excess fat, why is that? What happened? Well, we go back to the standard phrases that there is more calories in than there is calories out, or if we flip that around, another way of saying that is that we're burning less than we're consuming. And then we keep hearing that these are part of the laws of thermodynamics, that the energy in the system is constant and so forth. So these are indisputable. We can't argue. This is the way it is. But it's not the whole picture, and we'll get to that. Now, the problem is that there's a lot of blame and there's a lot of guilt involved with simplifying it this much, because if you take in more calories than you burn, then you're a glutton. Then your appetite is out of control. You have a hedonistic appetite. You have no character, no self-control, that if you could just control yourself, then you wouldn't have these issues, is what we keep hearing. And if we look at number two, if we think that the problem is we're not burning enough, then of course now we're lazy and we don't exercise enough. We're called slothful. And these, both gluttony and sloth, are two of the 7 deadly sins. So we should feel really guilty and really bad about not being able to control this. But it's not really your fault, and I'm going to get to that. So if we believe the standard simple model, like a lot of us have, and a lot of us have tried, then we decide all of a sudden we're going to eat less and move more. So based on the two things that we talked about, calories in, calories out, and burning calories, then we follow simple math. And we have found that if we eat 2,000 calories, our weight stays the same. So we do the math and we decide we're going to cut back to 1,500 calories, calorie restriction. Now we have a 500 calorie deficit based on our dietary intake. And then we decide we're also going to move more, so we exercise to burn another 500 calories, which comes out to 1,000 calorie deficit per day. We do the math, and that's equivalent to 2 pounds of fat per week, or 1 kilogram of fat per week. And we're all excited. This is going to be so easy. In this hypothetical example, we have someone weighing 300 pounds. We know we're going to lose 2 pounds a week according to the math. Math is not flexible. It's exact. This is the way it's going to work. So in 50 weeks, or about 1 year, we're going to go from 300 pounds to 200 pounds. And it's like, this is so straightforward. This is so simple. Why didn't we think of this before? Well, a lot of us probably did think of it before. And a lot of us did try it. And the problem is, it probably didn't look like that. My guess is that it probably looked like that. And then we get more guilty and we get more blamed, and we say, you should control yourself better. But we're going to look at this in a second, and it isn't your fault. Okay? These are mechanisms that you do not have control over. But why then is there such an enormous difference between the result that science predicts and the reality that we observe? And it all comes down to the body's perception. Does the body perceive that we have an abundance of energy, or do we have a lack of energy? And to understand that, we need to look a little bit deeper, because we didn't really finish this slide. We only got to point 2, but there's a 2A and a 2B. And one part of burning, if you're not burning enough, is if you're lazy. If you don't move, then yeah, you're not burning. But the other part of that is, what is the body burning on its own? What's the basal metabolic rate? And part 2B, if you're not burning enough, is because your body doesn't want to. If it has a sense of lack, then it says, I can't afford to spend that energy. I have to save that energy. But then you're going, hey, look, I've got plenty of energy. What's the problem? And there is a misunderstanding. Because again, it's not about the reality of the situation. It's about the perception of the body. It's the same as if people are really wealthy, but they still feel insecure. They could have millions in the bank and they can't make themselves spend anything because they have a sense of lack. Whereas other people with hardly anything in the bank go spend every penny. So it's about perception. It's not what's actually there. And if you could talk to your body and you would try to explain this misunderstanding, then you would say, hey, listen, body, I know you think there's a sense of lack. I know you think we can't afford it, but I promise you, we can afford this. You can safely go down that straight line, that green line toward weight loss, because here's what's really going on. I weigh 250 pounds, I have 50% body fat, for example, and then you would have over 400,000 extra calories to spend. That's a veritable fortune. When it comes to surplus energy, these numbers make someone as wealthy as they can get. So what's the problem? Why doesn't the body get it? Because there's a language barrier that unless you speak the language of hormones, you can't convince your body. It's an internal dialogue. And here's what drives it. So when you're hungry, your body says, I want to eat. You find some food, you eat, and then when your stomach is full, your body gets satisfied. And there's a ton of different hormones, and don't worry about what all these are, but insulin goes up, amylin goes up, pancreatic polypeptide goes up, cholecystokinin goes up, PYY, GLP-1, ghrelin goes down, leptin goes up. We're not going to worry about what all these are. I just want to show you that there's a lot of different players, that when your stomach is full, there's a bunch of different messages in place to signal satiety, to basically say, hey, shipment has been received, we're good for now. And then if all is in balance, if this body is still in a state of insulin sensitivity and balance, then in 3 to 4 hours, all these values return to baseline values. But here is where it gets interesting. And here I really, really want you to pay attention. Whether you have a weight problem or whether you can easily lose weight, you need to understand this, either so you could lose weight or you can have some sympathy for the people who have a harder time. What is the difference between a thin person, let's say someone who is sort of like myself, 6'3" or 190 centimeters, 185 pounds or about 85 kilograms, I guess. Someone who has usually been thin, hasn't fluctuated very much, and someone who is the same height, who used to weigh 300 pounds, but now they have successfully lost. They have, whatever they have done, they've gotten down to 185 pounds. So now on the surface, these two people look the same. But what is the difference in these signaling hormones that signal hunger and satiety and eating behavior? So when we look at insulin, ghrelin, and pancreatic polypeptide, the insulin is a fat storage hormone. That means we have an increased tendency to store away the energy. We have less access to it, so that's going to make us hungrier. Ghrelin is a hunger hormone. It tells us to go look for food. So all of these are increased in the person who have lost the weight. Even though they are now the same weight, these hormones are much higher. And then we look at some other hormones like leptin, which is a satiety hormone. We look at PYY and CCK, and don't worry about what they do. But the point is, they're all different. That these two people that look the same on the surface, their hormone levels are very, very different. Their hormones are still signaling as if this person is content and this person has lack. And you don't need to know all the detail, and I'm not going to memorize it, but what they do tell you is that these signals, they act to make you regain the lost weight. The body wants to gain the weight back. It's not happy where it is. It signals to increase hunger. It signals to decrease satiety, meaning after eating the same amount of food or at the same frequency, the person who has lost the weight, instead of never having had it, is not going to get as full from the same amount of food. And this person is still going to have a much higher capacity to store fat. They're going to have a tendency to store fat rather than use it. And the other thing to understand is what I say all the time. I'll show you this arrow to help you understand that there are going to be some people who have a very slight tendency. They'll be on the green end of the spectrum. Their tendency to regain this lost weight and to have all these factors to reverse the process are going to be very slight. Whereas for some people, it's going to be like a total rubber band. The force, the pull is going to be enormous. So we need to understand that whatever it is, it is. And just because we are at a certain place, we shouldn't compare ourselves to someone who is in a different situation. But even though we have all these different signaling molecules and hormones in different parts of the body, different tissues, it all comes back to the hypothalamus. That's where the signals and the triggers originate. And the hypothalamus is a very tiny little area in the middle of the brain, under the thalamus, but on top of the brain stem. And it's the master regulator. If anything needs regulating, hypothalamus is involved. It regulates heart rate, blood pressure, temperature, sleep cycles, and temperature, of course, is related to expenditure of energy. Breathing, energy balance, and breathing, of course, has to do with oxygen levels, CO2 levels, and pH. All of that is regulated. And related to energy balance, of course, also hunger and thirst. So the hypothalamus is where we ultimately have this perception of abundance or lack. And if there is a misunderstanding, then that is where that misunderstanding occurs. And that's where long-term we have to try to undo it. And there's not a single, simple, precise way to do this. It's more like the whole picture of a total lifestyle. And we need to understand more about the body, the physiology, and the laws of nature. And this is what I talk about a lot on this channel, to give people not just the methods, but also a more philosophical understanding about what the right thing to do is. So there are laws of nature, just like there's a law of gravity and so forth, that in nature, all other animals eat food that is appropriate for their species. There is no other species, there's no other animal that has a weight problem. Why? Because they eat things they're supposed to. They all eat whole food. They eat food that has never been processed. Like this guy running around, he's not going to find a processed breaded salmon. He's going to get the real thing. And that thing is going to have essential amino acids, essential fatty acids. It's going to have all the minerals and the vitamins and the fiber and the enzymes that he needs. And if he doesn't get it from the salmon, he's going to go find something else that has that, but it's going to be whole food. So that's the first key. And then, of course, All animals on the planet are involved in some sort of movement in acquiring their food. And that's something that humans have bypassed. We don't have to move. We don't have to go after anything. We push a button, we order it on the cell phone, and it shows up. And movement is involved with not just burning calories. That's not why we move. Movement stimulates and balances all aspects of physiology. And when we get all the pieces that we need of a holistic, balanced lifestyle, then the result is homeostasis. That is equilibrium. It's the place that the body returns to. It's the place where everything is working the way it's supposed to. And if we follow the laws of nature and we live like this, then the hypothalamus is also going to be part of that homeostasis. It's going to have a precise and appropriate perception of what the reality is and what to do. But humans don't really live like that anymore, do we? Instead, we have become experts at breaking the laws of nature. And the thing, though, is that nature doesn't care if and when we break the laws. We just suffer the consequences because we have these principles, these laws running inside us. So instead of following the laws, we now get 60 to 70% of our calories of the fuel from sugar, white flour, and seed oils. Things that are completely processed, completely devoid of any nutrients, anything that gives life. We also eat a lot of addictive chemicals. We eat a lot of toxic chemicals that interfere. The addictive chemicals, of course, change the eating behavior, change hunger and satiety. They bypass these normal regulatory mechanisms. And we now have 3 solid meals, but we also have snacks in between, and a lot of people will go sipping on a sweet tea or a soda or a drink all day long. So there's rarely 10 minutes where we don't swallow something. And if we did that once in a while on a vacation, once or twice a year, the body would be able to reset and return to homeostasis. But when we do that every day, year after year, for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, now the body has no defense against that. We're pushing the body further and further. We're changing the momentum, and eventually that hypothalamus gets confused. It has no reference anymore. It ends up out of balance, and it can't tell whether we have abundance or lack. And of course, if we have broken the laws of nature, the way to improve things are to restore the laws of nature. And how do we do that? Well, I often talk about an analogy between health and physiology and homeostasis, the healing principles that go on in the body, and that of water. If we have water, it tends to flow. It follows another law of nature called gravity, and water at an altitude will always try to get to sea level. And if there's no obstacle, the water will always get to sea level. But if we build an obstacle, if we build a dam, then we will stop the water from flowing temporarily, as long as that dam is there. But here's the good news, that if we remove the dam, we don't have to teach the water how to flow again. It already knows how. And that's how the body works as well. That if we just start removing the obstacles, the things that interfere with health, we don't have to teach the body to do anything different. It's already doing it. It's already flowing toward health. And that's such a powerful understanding to have, that once you remove the dam, the water will flow again. Once you start removing the obstacles of health, health will start flowing again. Now, depending on how long the obstacles have been there and how many layers of obstacles there are, it could be a good while before you see significant results. You'll probably see some results within weeks, but you may not see all the way sort of results that you're looking for unless you go months or years. And the number one thing that keeps health from flowing in the body is sugar. So you want to stop eating sugar. It's the ultimate processed food. It's the ultimate useless food. It's the ultimate interference. It clogs up the liver. It causes insulin resistance. The fructose in sugar is a liver poison. Just look at some of my other videos where I talk more about the details. I have videos on every one of these things that we're going to talk about, so you can go back and review that. Number 2, you want to eat whole food. Try to get at least 90% of your food from real unprocessed food. That means meat, fish, vegetables, plants, roots, anything that is roughly in its original form, the way that we found it or hunted it or picked it. It should be close to that form, then it's a whole food. And if you're eating mostly garbage today, then try to get to 50%. Eat half real food, and then you try to increase that percentage gradually. If you're pretty healthy, it doesn't necessarily have to be 100%. You can make exceptions here and there, but closer to 100% is going to be better. Number 3 is to reduce the amount of carbohydrates. And again, I've done videos on this. This isn't necessarily equally true for everybody. It depends on how carbohydrate intolerant you are. And most people who are overweight are insulin resistant and very carbohydrate intolerant. So cutting down on carbs and then cutting down on the number of meals also. Because every time you eat a meal, every time you eat a meal high in carbohydrate, you're going to stimulate insulin, and that's where a lot of these problems are coming from. Number 5 is you want to add some movement. And even if you don't have to move to go find your food, then you want to find some other movement in some other fashion. It doesn't have to be in a gym, it doesn't have to be called exercise, but your body requires movement. It drives every physiological function in your body. Number 6 is to get sleep. Try to get an adequate amount, whatever that means for you, and try to get it on a reasonably similar time period. And for most people, it fits the hormones and the circadian rhythms better if you can get it during a dark period of the day. And number 7 is to reduce stress. And the best way to do that is with breathing exercises and meditation. Every single disease known to man can be linked to stress in some way. But stress is your perception of what's happening out there. You can't change the world, but you can change your perception of it. And like I said, the best way to do that is meditation. Now, humans are creatures of habit. And anytime we even think about changing something, we have resistance because changing takes a little bit of effort. And therefore, our first impulse is that this is going to be too hard. But it's not. Just allow yourselves to spend a little time with the thought and then just do something. Make a really small, simple change that you know you can do and stick with. And then what's going to happen is pretty soon you'll feel better because your body starts moving toward homeostasis. And then even if it takes years, like we talked about, then it's not going to be a burden. It's going to feel easy. It's going to feel like you want to do it because it's getting better and better, and you're understanding why. And before you know it, you might have set out to just lose some weight or some belly fat, but you're going to be amazed at how many areas of your life and how many areas of your health get improved as a result of helping your body move in the right direction. And in the end, what you end up with is a better life, not just a leaner body. And in the words of Wayne Dyer, remember that it's never too late to have a happy childhood. If you enjoyed this video, you're going to love that one. And if you truly want to master health by understanding how the body really works, make sure you subscribe, hit that bell, and turn on all the notifications so you never miss a life-saving video.